There is a type of person who gives everything. Every room they walk into, they read the temperature before they take off their coat. Every conversation they enter, they already know who needs what before a single word has been spoken. They sense tension the way other people sense weather. They feel emotions the way a tuning fork feels sound, not from a distance, not through analysis, but in their body, instantly, involuntarily. That person is you. And someone found that out, and they used it against you in ways that were so precise, so perfectly calibrated to exactly who you are, that you are only now beginning to understand what was actually done. What I'm about to show you in the next few minutes is not a recovery plan. It is something more powerful than that. It is an explanation so precise that by the end of it, everything you went through will make a different kind of sense. A kind of sense that does not diminish what happened, but transforms what it means. Pay attention, because this part matters more than anything else you have heard since it ended. Let me tell you about something that happened in a psychology lab in 1948. A researcher named B.F. Skinner put pigeons in a box. Some pigeons got food every time they pressed a lever. Predictable, reliable, consistent. Those pigeons pressed the lever a few times, ate, and were content. Other pigeons got food randomly. Sometimes pressing the lever worked, sometimes it didn't. No pattern, no predictability, pure chance. Those pigeons went insane. They pressed the lever hundreds of times. They became frantic, compulsive, almost frenzied. They could not stop. Skinner called it intermittent reinforcement, and what he discovered in that laboratory with those birds is the precise psychological mechanism that was running inside your relationship without you ever knowing it had a name. Here is what nobody tells you when they hand you the vocabulary of narcissistic abuse. They give you the words: gaslighting, love bombing, devaluation, discard. And the words are real, and the words matter. But words are a map. And you do not need a map of the territory you already walked through bleeding. What you need, what actually changes everything, is understanding the mechanism. Because when you understand the mechanism, something remarkable happens. The blame shifts. Not to them, not to you, to the architecture of the trap itself. And the moment that happens, you stop asking what was wrong with you, and you start asking something entirely different. Something that leads somewhere. Stay with me, because what I am about to explain is going to sound technical, and then it is going to hit you somewhere very personal. When the person who hurt you showed up at the beginning, your brain did something it was designed by millions of years of evolution to do. It bonded. Not because you were naive, not because you were weak, not because your instincts failed you. Your brain flooded itself with oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin in response to the intense, focused, relentless attention you were receiving. Your nervous system interpreted that chemical cascade as the signal it was built to recognize. This person is safe, this person is significant, this person matters. And then, the warmth became unpredictable. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes you did everything right and still felt the cold. Sometimes you did nothing at all and the warmth came back without explanation. And that unpredictability, that is not random cruelty. That is the slot machine. And your brain, the same brain that bonds powerfully and loves deeply and feels everything with extraordinary precision, that brain became addicted. Not to love, to the possibility of love. And there is a canyon of difference between those two things. Here is why this matters more than you might think right now. The depth of the addiction was not proportional to your weakness. It was proportional to your depth. The more capacity you have to love, the more devastating intermittent reinforcement is. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the more precisely you will try to decode the pattern, to figure out what to do differently, to understand why the warmth comes and goes. You were not broken by this. You were targeted because of your strengths. And that distinction is not a small comfort. That distinction is the foundation of everything that comes next. But I want to show you something that goes even deeper than the neuroscience. Something that most people who talk about this topic completely miss. Because here's the thing about you specifically, about the kind of person you are. You were not just caught in a psychological trap. You were caught in the most sophisticated trap that exists, designed with an almost eerie precision for someone exactly like you. And the reason it was designed for you is that you are one of the rarest kinds of people on this planet. Think about what it actually means to be someone who feels what other people feel. Not metaphorically, neurologically. There is research on something called mirror neurons, the cells in your brain that fire when you observe someone else's experience as if you are having it yourself. In highly empathic people, this system runs hotter than in most. You do not just understand other people's pain intellectually. You absorb it. You do not just notice when someone is uncomfortable. You feel the discomfort in your own body. You are walking through the world with what is essentially a supercharged emotional radar running constantly, picking up signals that most people cannot even detect. That is your gift. And that is exactly what was used against you. Because the person who hurt you did not love you, but they were extraordinary at performing the signals that your radar was designed to detect. They spoke the language of your nervous system fluently. And your radar, which was built to find genuine safety and genuine connection, found someone who had learned to mimic both with breathtaking precision. And your radar said yes. And you listened to your radar the way you were supposed to, the way any intelligent person would. This is the part I need you to actually absorb, not just hear. You did not fail. Your instincts did not fail. They were outmaneuvered. There is a profound difference. A chess grandmaster can be beaten by someone who studied their specific patterns and built an entire opening strategy around their tendencies. That does not make the grandmaster a bad chess player. It makes them someone who encountered a specific opponent who had prepared specifically for them. What was done to you was not evidence of your inadequacy. It was evidence of how much you were worth targeting. Now I need to tell you about something that is happening inside you right now that you may not even be aware of. Research on trauma and emotional recovery consistently shows something counterintuitive. The people who go deepest into pain, who feel the most, who process experience most thoroughly, those people do not heal slower. They heal with more depth. They do not just recover, they transform. There is a term in psychology called post-traumatic growth, not resilience. Resilience is bouncing back to where you were. Post-traumatic growth is arriving somewhere you could never have reached without the difficulty. And the research is specific about who experiences this most dramatically. It is not the people who suffered the least. It is the people who feel the most, who process the deepest, who extract meaning rather than just endure experience. It is people exactly like you. But here is the thing about post-traumatic growth that the recovery industry almost never tells you. It does not happen automatically. It does not happen just because you survived. It requires a specific kind of engagement with what happened. A willingness to ask not just how do I get through this, but what does this make possible? And that question, I want to sit in that question with you for a moment, because inside it is something that could genuinely change the trajectory of your entire life from this moment forward. What you have right now, at this exact point in your recovery, wherever you are in it, is knowledge. Not abstract theoretical knowledge. Not the kind you can get from a book or a podcast or a course. Lived, embodied, nervous system level knowledge about the mechanics of human manipulation. You know what love bombing feels like from the inside, which means you will recognize it in someone's opening sentence in any future interaction. Not because you thought about it, because your body will know first. You know what gaslighting does to your relationship with your own perception? Which means you now have a near automatic sensitivity to any moment someone tries to rewrite your experience of reality. You will feel the air change before the first word is finished. You know what the complete absence of genuine reciprocity feels like, not as a concept, as a physical sensation, a specific hollowness in a specific place. That means you will never again confuse performance for presence or smoothness for substance. These are not things most people know. These are things most people cannot learn without going through exactly what you went through. And you already went through it. It is already yours. Now I want to talk about something that is the center of everything in this entire conversation. The thing that cuts deeper than the chemistry, deeper than the manipulation tactics, deeper than even the grief. I want to talk about what they actually took. Because when people discuss narcissistic abuse, they talk about time and energy and emotional investment. And all of that is true. But the real loss, the one that causes the quiet devastation that does not have a clean name, is more specific than that. What they took was your trust in yourself. Not your trust in them, your trust in you. Your ability to believe your own perceptions. Your confidence in your own instincts. Your sense that when something felt wrong, it was actually wrong. That is the theft that almost nobody names clearly enough. And it matters because you can survive losing time. You can survive losing energy. But when you lose access to your own interior compass, When the relationship between you and your own sense of reality becomes fractured, that is when the real disorientation sets in. That is why recovery from this feels so different from recovery from other kinds of loss. Because other kinds of loss leave the self intact. This one came for the self directly. But here's what I need you to understand about that compass, about that internal sense that was systematically undermined, told it was unreliable, trained into silence, punished for accuracy. It did not break. That is the thing. Under the pressure of years of having your reality questioned, something in you that was built to survive did not shatter. It went underground. It protected itself by going quiet. And the silence was not damage, it was intelligence. When an environment becomes genuinely dangerous for openness, when being honest about what you perceive consistently results in punishment, the nervous system does something elegant. It hides what is most precious. It takes your most sensitive instruments offline until there is a safer environment to operate them in again. That compass is still there, intact, accurate, waiting. And in the days and weeks and months since the relationship ended, you have probably already started to feel it coming back online. Small moments where your gut says something and then turns out to be right. Small flickers of knowing that you used to dismiss and that you are beginning, tentatively, to trust again. That is not a minor thing. That is the return of the most important navigation system you have. And it came back not because the difficulty ended. It came back because you survived the difficulty. It came back because it was never actually gone. There is something I want to say about the grief because I think it gets handled wrong in almost every conversation about this type of recovery. Most people want to rush through the grief. They want to get to the part where they feel better. They want to stop feeling the weight of the years, the weight of who they were before, and who they became in the relationship, and who they are trying to figure out how to be now. And I understand that impulse. Of course I do. But grief that is not met directly, grief that is rushed or suppressed or performed on a timeline that is more about other people's comfort than your actual process, that grief does not go away. It goes sideways. It shows up as rage at the wrong moment. It shows up as numbness in places that should feel alive. It shows up as a kind of distance from your own life that feels like fog you can never quite walk out of. The grief deserves your full emotional intelligence turned directly toward it, because you cannot build something real on a foundation of unprocessed pain. The comeback is not built on top of the grief, it is built through it. And the willingness to go through rather than around is one of the most significant decisions you will make in your entire recovery. Now I want to talk about something practical, because all of this is true and important, and I believe it can change how you see yourself and what happened. But I also know that understanding is not the same as living it. And there are specific things that make the difference between someone who intellectually understands their recovery and someone who actually builds a different life. The first is this. You have to stop relitigating the relationship in your own mind. You know why you stayed. I just explained it to you in neurochemical and psychological detail. You do not need to keep prosecuting yourself for the decision. Every hour you spend in the internal courtroom reviewing the evidence of your own choices is an hour not spent building what comes next. The trial is over. You have already rendered the only verdict that matters. You left. That is the verdict. Everything else is the sentencing phase, and you are not obligated to keep attending it. The second is something that sounds small and is actually enormous. Start trusting the discomfort. I do not mean seek it out, I mean this. One of the most lasting effects of this kind of relationship is a calibration problem. Because your nervous system spent years in a state of high alert trying to read and manage someone whose behavior was designed to be unreadable and unmanageable, normal, healthy discomfort in relationships now feels like danger. The slight friction of two people with different needs negotiating something together feels like the beginning of an avalanche. The mild uncertainty of a new connection feels like the early signs of something sinister. You will have to practice distinguishing between the discomfort of danger and the discomfort of growth. They feel similar. They are entirely different. Danger discomfort has a cold, contracting quality. It pulls you inward and downward. Growth discomfort has a different texture. It is warm and slightly vertiginous, like standing at the edge of something high and vast with good light. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills of your recovery. And it is a skill, which means it can be built. The third is the one people resist most. You are going to have to let people see you again. Not all at once, not without discernment, not by giving the access that was exploited back to just anyone. But the tendency after this kind of abuse is to seal the permeability that was weaponized, to go behind glass, to be present without being reachable. And I understand why, of course I do. But the gifts you have, the depth, the ability to create genuine connection, the capacity to make other people feel understood in a way that most people go their entire lives without experiencing, those gifts require an audience of some kind. They require relationship to function. A lighthouse is only useful when there are ships, and the ships are out there. People who have been waiting for exactly what you carry. People whose lives will be genuinely different because you let yourself be visible again. The answer to having been exploited for your openness is not to close. It is to develop the discernment to choose where the openness goes. Because here is the thing about who you are becoming right now in this exact moment of your life. You are not the same person who walked into that relationship, not even close. That person had gifts that were unguarded, powerful gifts, extraordinary gifts, but unguarded ones. The person you are right now has the same gifts which are intact, which never left, which are coming back online with more precision than they have ever had. But those gifts now come with something they did not have before. They come with knowledge. They come with tested instincts. They come with a nervous system that has been through the specific fire that tempers and refines rather than destroys. They come with an ability to recognize what is real from what is performed that most people will never develop in their entire lifetimes. You are not starting over. That framing is completely wrong. You are not going back to who you were. You are not rebuilding from zero. You are deploying everything you have always been, amplified by everything you now know, into a life that you are going to build with a clarity and a precision and an intentionality that was not available to you before any of this happened. The comeback that is available to you right now is not a return. It is an arrival at a destination that required the entire journey to reach. Every painful mile, every moment of doubt, every night when the exhaustion had no name, all of it was the road. And this moment, right here, right now, the moment you are beginning to understand what you actually survived and what it actually gave you, this is where the road ends and the destination begins. You have been carrying something this whole time, carrying it through the hardest months of your life, carrying it through the confusion and the grief and the slow, disorienting work of figuring out who you are when no one else's chaos needs management. And what you have been carrying underneath all of it, underneath the exhaustion and the self-doubt and the quiet devastation of not quite recognizing yourself in the mirror, is the most powerful version of yourself that has ever existed. You carried it without knowing. You carried it when you had no evidence it was real. You carried it on the nights when it felt like the least true thing in the world. That was not weakness. That was the most extraordinary kind of strength there is. The kind that does not announce itself. The kind that does not require an audience. The kind that keeps moving quietly in the dark toward a light that only you could see. The light was real. It was always real. And you are standing in it right now. What you do with it from here is entirely and completely yours to decide. But I think you already know. Because you have always known. That is who you are. That is who you have always been. And that person, the real one, underneath everything that was done and said and taken, that person has been waiting for this exact moment. They are not behind you. They are not gone. They are the one reading these words right now. Welcome back.